look at all the latest stories this Sunday night with the ITV News.
Iran tables a new peace proposal, but President Trump shows little appetite for a diplomatic breakthrough.
Doing very well with regard to Iran. Again, they want to make a deal. They're decimated.
Also tonight, Green Party leader Zach Polanski doubles down and says the police should not be above scrutiny. Are summer holidays in jeopardy? The government draws up plans to help airlines tackle potential jet fuel shortages. And
This is ITV News with Shehab Khan.
good evening. Iran pushed back against Donald Trump today, putting its new peace deal on the table and warning the US president that the room for American decision-making had narrowed. The message from Tehran was that the US must choose between an impossible military operation or a bad deal. Earlier, President Trump had again threatened to renew airstrikes on Iran, saying it was yet to pay what he called a big enough price for what they have done to the world. Ellie Pitt has the latest.
There might be a ceasefire, but that didn't stop American troops boarding a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz this week. US activity continues here, as do Iranian attacks on vessels trying to pass through. Both sides in this war say they want an end to this, but neither is agreeing to the other's terms. And at the centre of the demands is who should have control over this globally important shipping lane.
The Iranians have to give up on this, very maximalist demand around the strait itself. And I think that there are ways to get them to climb down on that, but you need to have more confidence-building measures. And right now, I just don't see that there are enough forces rallying to do that.
While traffic in the strait stays next to nothing, there is an economic chokehold on President Trump's military strategy, and the Iranian regime knows it. Tonight, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued an ultimatum to the United States on social media, posting, "There is only one way to read this. Trump must choose between an impossible military operation or a bad deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The room for US decision-making has narrowed." But as he arrived in Florida for a golf tournament last night, President Trump told reporters it was Iran who was at pains to make a peace deal.
Doing very well with regard to Iran. Again, they want to make a deal. They're decimated. They're having a hard time figuring out who their leader is.
Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah's persistent exchange of attacks are also believed to be preventing the wider conflict from stopping. Negotiations between Iran and America appear to have turned into posturing, and any plans for peace are on pause. Ellie Pitt, ITV News.
Green Party leader Zach Polanski said today the police should not be above scrutiny as he was asked about the controversy over a social media post he shared in the wake of the Golders Green attack. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is here. Carl, what is all of this about?
Well, at the end of last week, some viewers may know Zach Polanski apologised for sharing a social media post that criticised the actions of the officers who arrested the suspect in the Golders Green attack. For that, he was widely criticised by the leaders of other parties and by the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, in an open letter. Today, Zach Polanski qualified the apology that he had given at the end of last week. This is what he had to say.
I was very concerned by what I saw, and I remain concerned. The reason why I've apologised is because I accept that X or social media is not the appropriate forum to have that concern. I also think an open letter from the Commissioner also wasn't necessarily the appropriate forum, but I'm glad we've resolved that now. I've asked the Commissioner for a meeting. I'll be taking those conversations up in private.
Now, what's at issue here is the tactics used by the officers who were making that arrest. We can show a bit of the video for those who haven't seen it. It was clearly a very frightening and violent moment. It shows that once the suspect was tasered and on the ground, he was apparently kicked in the head by officers as they attempted to disarm him. Sir Mark Varney said that is the point. They were trying to disarm a man who they knew was armed with a knife, at least, who at that point they believed to be a terrorist, and who they feared could also be carrying a bomb, and that is why he's backing the actions of his officers. Zach Polanski says that he is now seeking a private meeting with Sir Mark, but obviously all of this comes at a very heightened time with the local elections coming up on Thursday, which is why he says Sir Mark shouldn't have written to him to criticise him openly.
Oh, thank you very much. In those local elections that you just heard Carl mention, both Labour and the Conservatives are expected to lose seats, according to the latest polls. Professor Jane Green, ITV News' election expert, has been taking a look at whether the results could spell the end of the two-party system altogether.
We've been given exclusive data from YouGov, and it shows how we can make sense of the huge changes happening in British politics. Now, here's the big question. Is Britain's political landscape about to change forever?
Scan the QR code that is on the screen now to watch the latest episode of What You Need to Know and to find out the major impact these elections could have. Now, the days of half-empty flights could be coming to an end as the government looks at ways to deal with possible shortages of jet fuel caused by the Iran war. Airlines will now be allowed to group passengers from different flights together on fewer planes if they need to. Charlotte Cross has more.
If you want a flight at a particular time this summer, you could be in for disappointment. New government plans would make it easier for airlines to bump passengers to different time slots, saying it would help companies plan and prevent last-minute cancellations amid fears of a shortage in jet fuel.
If, and it's a big if because we're not there at the moment, if there are constraints to supply, then they can run appropriate schedules and people can get decent notice. I don't want passengers turning up at departure gates and getting a text message 20 minutes before they're meant to be going on their holiday, finding out that that flight won't be taken off.
Around 20% of the world's oil and liquidized natural gas passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which has effectively been closed by Iran as conflict in the Middle East continues. Allowing airlines to cancel quieter flights would save valuable fuel if supplies begin to dwindle. But critics, including consumer group Which, are worried about the impact, particularly on those making short trips or those who need to make connecting flights. And people are being urged to know their rights if they are affected.
We have some of the strongest air passenger rights in the world. So if your flight is cancelled, you have a right to a refund or to be rerouted to your destination as quickly as possible. So those air passenger rights are there for a reason.
The changes would only be temporary to cover the summer holidays. It's not clear at this stage what could happen in the autumn. Charlotte Cross, ITV News.
Now, on to a bit of a developing story tonight. A virus outbreak on a cruise ship has left 3 people dead and 5 more suspected cases. The illness on board the MV Hondius cruise ship is still being investigated. One case of the rare hantavirus has been confirmed. The ship was sailing from Argentina to Cape Verde, and there are reports that one of those being treated is British. A man and woman have died after an explosion at a house in Bristol this morning. 2 further adults and a child were taken to hospital with minor injuries. A major incident was declared and around 70 local residents had to be evacuated. Police are not treating the explosion as a suspected terrorist incident. And Sir Alex Ferguson was rushed to hospital as a precaution today after feeling unwell at Old Trafford. The former Manchester United manager was pictured with guests at the stadium shortly before being taken ill. On the pitch, Manchester United did their old boss proud, beating Liverpool 3-2 to secure Champions League football for next season. And tonight, there's hope for Spurs that they can avoid relegation. They moved out of the drop zone with a win at Aston Villa. Here's Chris Keller.
Full steam ahead for Spurs at Villa Park. This was their chance to climb out of the relegation places. Villa was priceless. At last, some hope for the fans, and with Richarlison scoring a second, belief that one of England's glamour clubs can beat the dreaded drop. Villa got West Ham with 3 games to play. At Old Trafford, Michael Carrick boosted his hopes of keeping the Man United coaching job beyond the end of the season, and returning to the Champions League was made all. Junior's early goal was followed by a second, perhaps with a hint of good fortune, maybe a touch of handball from Benjamin Sesko, but VAR did not think so, and the goal was allowed to stand. Quite extraordinary. United keeper Lamans got into an almighty tangle, and Cody Gakpo could not believe his luck. 2-2. But this has been a season of frustration for the outgoing champions, and Kobe Mainu won it for United.
Staying with sport, Manchester City have taken another step towards winning the Women's Super League title, but they left it late against Liverpool. Their winning goal from Rebecca Knapp didn't come until stoppage time. The win means that City's title fate remains in their own hands, and victory in the final game of the season will clinch a first title in a decade. Defending champions Celtic are still in the Scottish Premiership title race thanks to this effort. 18 minutes from time, they sealed a 2-1 win away to 10-man Hibernian this afternoon. Celtic are now level with Hearts at the top of the table. Hearts play third-placed Rangers tomorrow. The Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli won today's Miami Grand Prix, which was brought forward by 3 hours due to a stall threat. It's the 19-year-old's third race victory in a row and leaves him top of the championship standings. Defending world champion Lando Norris was second. And finally, Chris McCausland won Strictly 2 years ago. He'd made history as the show's first blind contestant, but it didn't open doors as some had hoped. Today, more than 30 blind and partially sighted dancers were back on the ballroom floor for the International Freedom to Dance competition. The many hope will keep blind dancing in the spotlight. Here's Helen Keenan.
Mesmerising moves, gracefully gliding across the dance floor. What we haven't told you is that the competitors are blind. They wanted you to see the dancing before the disability.
From here, we're going to do another quarter turn. This time, you're going to end up facing my voice here. Yeah? So
routines are adapted to teach instead through sound and touch.
Entering the competition, it's really a game changing for me with my self-confidence and self-esteem, and also inspiring my children.
Frankie, this is the first time you've seen Mum performing. How was it?
It was really great and I'm very proud of her.
This is the first mainstream dance competition in London to include blind and partially sighted categories. Strictly Come Dancing's first blind winner, and this moment to emulate the experience certainly brought awareness. But it hasn't translated into the change they'd hoped for.
We've had a lot more inquiries from people wanting to dance with blind partially sighted because they thought, well, if he can do it, maybe I can. But the problem is there's not much out there. So we're the only organisation providing blind and bald dance classes. Is this a step towards attitudes changing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think competitions like this are so important because it's kind of showing that, you know, I'm guessing a lot of people in the audience wouldn't know that a blind person can dance, and seeing them in action today, it might just change, you know, opinions.
The transition to inclusivity has been slow. It's starting to move in the right direction. Helen Keenan, ITV News.
That is it for tonight. From all the team here, good night.